Hey there, welcome to the Jewish Adulting Podcast. Thank you for joining me today on your adulting journey. Before we get started, can you do me a quick favor? Can you hit the like and subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to this? I promise it's not a lifetime commitment, but when you don't subscribe, it's kind of like coffee without caffeine. What are we even doing here? Or like latkes without applesauce? Are we even living our best life? When you subscribe, you not only give me warm, fuzzy feelings, but you're also helping me bring amazing guests who rely on subscriber counts to know whether joining me is a worthy endeavor. More subscribers mean more epic conversations for you. And hey, if you're feeling extra generous, you can also show your support by becoming a monthly supporter at buymeacoffee.com/Jewish Adulting. Whether it's $1, $5, $10, or even $20, every little bit helps make this podcast rolling. Of course, if you're sitting on a cool million or even looking to sponsor the show, reach out to me at jewishadulting@gmail.com. Also, I'm always looking out for engaging, thoughtful, passionate guests to join me. So if you want to nominate someone or want to come on the podcast yourself, reach out. Let's make a podcast shidduch.
This is Rabbi Ben-Zion Schaefer of the Shmuz.com. Jewish adulting is about shining a light on parts of ourselves in order to do Avodas Hashem with all the tools and resources at our disposal. It is an honor and a privilege to have every day to further refine our character and grow closer to Hashem. Take advantage of these opportunities before it's too late.
Hello, everybody. This is your host, Chadba Rose of the Jewish Adulting Podcast. I actually haven't recorded in quite a while because Baruch Hashem, I have quite a few podcasts that I recorded when I had more time. And so make sure you like and subscribe and follow so that you can see and listen to all the wonderful speeches. And I have to say, each one of them gets better than the one before because practice makes perfect. And we just sort of really started getting into a groove of getting good speakers on and good conversation going. And so not to say that the beginning ones were bad, but they just seem to get better and better each time. So I want to encourage everyone to go listen to the old ones, but also really sign up and hear the new ones. We're releasing 6 times a month, once a week on Sundays, and then every other Wednesdays. We're having a special one coming up, but since this one is probably not going to come out for a few months, I'm not going to spoil anything. Tonight I have with me Shmuel Tzvi Adler. Do you go by Rabbi? Do you have a title?
So the Shmuel Tzvi Adler is great.
Okay. And he is here tonight to talk about his book and also to tell us a little bit about himself. So, can you please tell the audience a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background and what you do and what made you decide to write this book?
Sure. So first, I just want to thank you, Mrs. Rose. What you're doing is amazing. And just so you know, just for, my wife and I personally, in our experience and our journey, it was for me personally, it was therapeutic just to, go through, you sent me some questions to review and just going through, the memories and trying to, gather my thoughts together was really actually gave me physical and encouragement. So, welcome to the team. Giving, my wife and I received a lot of encouragement along our way from many people, from my in-laws, my parents, siblings and relatives and friends and neighbors. And as we'll discuss, every small amount makes a difference. And just the fact that you valued my book and valued the idea of interviewing me means a lot. So thank you for that.
No problem.
So just a brief background. I grew up in Baltimore. I went to yeshiva Ner Yisroel many years, where my father was a Rebbe for a long time. And eventually I was there for high school and for most of my yeshiva years. Eventually I went into the food industry. I was a chef. First I started cooking in the yeshiva, and then I was a chef in a nursing home, and I worked for a catering business. And then for the past several years, I changed out of the food industry. I mean, I still do work in the food industry at home, but now I do billing for nursing homes. I work for a company called Centers Healthcare, which is the corporate office is located in the Bronx, and my job is to basically get the insurance company to pay money which they owe, which they're not necessarily interested in paying. With regards to my book, as we'll discuss further, my wife and I were blessed with a son named Yehoshua. He was born about 10 years ago. His birthday is actually coming up soon. And he was born 4 months early, which, just to give you an idea, that's the 24th week of pregnancy, which is extremely, extremely prematurely. And he was born very small. and he had a number of medical issues, which we'll discuss a little bit. But both before and after our son was born, doctors told us many, many negative predictions about him and about his future or lack of future. And Baruch Hashem, the book just basically describes the lessons that we learned along the way. And the idea is try to show the positivity that we saw despite the negative predictions. Our son is a very smiley, happy kid. And that's what really the book is focusing on.
Right. So I think a lot of people who go through like challenging, unique times, people will say to them something like, you should write a book. I mean, I'm sure there are millions of people who could write a story about, what's going on in their lives. We each have our own challenges, and there's medical problems, there's, financial and relationships, and there's all kinds of things that happen in this world because it's a world where, that's the way Hashem made it. So I think that my question about what inspired you to write the book is about understanding the motivation. Is it that you felt that your experience and your transformation as a person and your connection to Hashem and everything and your whole journey was so impactful that you wanted to write it down and have people get physics from it?
So it was partly that, but also, to be honest, I enjoyed writing. So already when I was single in yeshiva, I would write. I always wanted to write something, So I guess, and with Shmuel and Nechama, our life journey really just brought me to a situation where I would want to write, and I have the conditions to write, because of the journey with our son. But I didn't start off. It wasn't like, okay, let me write a book. I actually wrote each article. The book is made up of a number of articles, and each article was written as things were happening. Like while we were in the ICU with our son, there was a number of articles which I wrote. So it wasn't like I just decided, let's write a book, and that was it. As I wrote these articles, I distributed them to a list of email list to friends and family. And, as time went on, Baruch Hashem, I got a lot of positive feedback. And, people told me you should write it into a book. So that just encouraged an idea which I already had.
Well, I mean, I think that one of the things, if I could have gone back, would have been to keep some sort of journal or writing. I think it would have been very therapeutic and helpful. And then also, I know that a lot of people think like, I'm going to remember this so vividly because it's so impactful in my life. I'm going to remember this extremely vividly. But then in the minutia and the details and the hecticity of life, you don't remember all the details. So the fact that you kept like a journal, an accounting, a blog, whatever you call it, is probably very helpful to you, both from a practical point of view of remembering details, but also for sharing it with the family and also therapeutically, I imagine. So could we talk about when you first learned your son's name is Yehoshua, right?
Correct.
Okay. When your wife was pregnant, what was the first time, or do you remember what was the first time there was an inkling that things might not be as traditional? This might not be a traditional pregnancy. This might not be a traditional birth.
Yeah, so we went to first one doctor and then subsequently a number of other doctors who all said that based on the ultrasound imaging, something was wrong. They didn't know exactly what was wrong. Each doctor told us different variations, and it started from there. But in the beginning there was not one doctor that had really anything positive to say, which, as you can imagine, was extremely difficult for us.
Right. So they were telling you that your wife was carrying a fetus that was incompatible with life. That must have been a real gut punch.
300%. It was one of the most difficult times of our whole experience.
And I'm also sort of curious, in the frum community, so much of our lives as married couples is so private, for good reason, but it could also kind of isolate. Were you telling your family about what was going on? Did you guys keep it from them? How did you share that news? What was the engagement with your family or loved ones at that time when you first got that prediction?
The news. Sure. So I like the way that you asked the question, because there was the benefits and the downside of the way you described of being part of the frum community, and only because we had to be, due to privacy, we didn't want to tell a lot of people. It's not like the child was born yet. That was, our baby was sick in the hospital. That was more public. My wife was so pregnant, so we told close family we wanted them to daven, but really the big benefit was like we reached out to a few rabbeim that we were close with, and only a few real close friends, because again, just for privacy reasons, it was just easier not to, let too many people know. But the more close friends that I reached out to, the more rabbeim and rabbis that we spoke to, the more stories we heard of similar situations where doctors were predicting negative outcomes in utero before a baby was born. And there's countless stories. And I want the audience to hear this. Anyone that is going through an experience like this or knows someone else is going through an experience like this, there are literally countless stories where doctors predicted a host of negative things about an unborn child. And a lot of the time, the predictions are either totally wrong or off their mark. So, the more stories we heard, with positive outcomes, the more it encouraged us. Not to say that we thought everything was going to be fine and dandy, but it just gave us a lot more positivity to grab onto.
Right. So I know that I was speaking to somebody about the things that are kept hidden from us. And I couldn't find where I had learned this, but I learned at some point, like there are some things that is kept hidden from us. It's like, the weather, the day you're going to die, and what's in the womb, like what's going on from a pregnant woman. And then the obvious question that those of us in the 21st century need to ask is, well, does this still apply? I mean, we know everything that's in the womb. We have 4D ultrasounds, and we could hear, and we could see, and we could basically touch everything that's in utero. Is it still really hidden from us? And I think this is an example of what there is a limitation, even with all the technology that we have, because we don't really know the outcome of what's going to happen, and what's, we just don't know. So even if I think actually at one point I don't know if I told my kids this, so they might be listening to this hot off the press if they listen to my podcast, even. But when I was pregnant with my first kid, the ultrasound did this thing where she was like hemming and hawing. And of course, as a first time, newly pregnant woman, I was losing it. I had a ton of anxiety. And she mentioned she totally shouldn't have done this. It's against all protocols. She was mentioning that there seems to be a lot of fluid on the brain, and this sometimes is a sign of Down syndrome. And I was so panicky. And until my son was born, totally fine, totally normal, without Down syndrome, Baruch Hashem, I was really worried. Now, I don't know if this was just sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, like a flyaway comment that she just was saying, but it shows that you can't see everything, even with modern technology. So I think that, from the time that you found out that your son was going to be incompatible with life and the time your son was born, was that a very short window of time?
It seemed like an extremely long time, but, after I reflected on it, I recognized that it really wasn't that long. Several weeks, maybe a few months, but really not that long.
Right. So when he was born, I'm imagining, there was still a lot of unknowns, and that, I guess my question to you is, there was unknowns, there is unknowns, and in all of this, what were some like recurring values and thoughts and practices that you have from your hashkafa, from growing up in a frum household with a Torah background? What were some things that helped you navigate and persevere and even grow during this time? Not just to survive, but to possibly even thrive. Like, what were some of the values that kept you going?
Right. So I think that's one of the significant part of my book is dedicated to discussing that, because I think that's one of the a major idea which my wife and I grew in, which we'll get touch more later on. But I don't want to just address two parts. Before someone was born, like I said, and really your example was great, where there's really, again, countless stories where doctors predict various issues before baby was born. And even in 2025 or 2024, whatever the year is in the past, 10 to 20 years, it's still very often, if a person just hears the stories, it's very often that it's their predictions are wrong. Now, your example is a great example. And before someone was born, there was one Rebbe, Tzvi Berkowitz, who really gave me advice that I was able to latch onto, which was one of the driving forces that gave us encouragement. And he told us straight out that it was an email, and I saved the email to this day, that especially before a baby is born, the idea that the doctor's predictions should be wrong is not considered a miracle at all, because it's so common for them to be wrong, especially before baby's born. And there's nothing wrong with hoping and davening that they'll be wrong. It's not like you're going against nature, because it's so common for them to be wrong. So just that clarity, like he just told me the way it is, really gave me a lot of encouragement. But like you said, there's so many stories. And one of the things they said about our son was that I'm pretty sure is that he had fluid in his brain also. But at the end, that didn't end up being a major problem after he was born. So before our son was born, one of the main driving forces that gave us, encouragement was this recognition, which was reinforced by Rebbe Tzvi was told us that there was so much unknown, and really doctors are very much groping in the dark, despite the fact that 2025, especially before baby's born. After our son was born, it was more of a different experience. In a way, it was a bit easier because we actually had a child in front of us that we could see, that we could love, that we could connect with. So that was easier. But then he had a lot more medical issues that we were able to also see clearly.
Right. So would you say that your tefillah was different or altered, or your amuna or bitachon was altered in any way during your journey over these last 10 years, 11 years?
Absolutely. Yeah, 500%. So just to give an example, if I may, just to go back again, before our son was born, there's one specific story which stands out to me. And again, countless doctors were telling us that our son wouldn't survive. And it was excruciating. So we told this is our first son, and to be told that he's not going to survive was very dark and challenging. But many of us, if we go to yeshiva or to girls in school and seminary, we're taught the concepts of emunah and believing that Hashem could do anything and Hashem could save us at any moment. And I remember there's one point in time I actually was working for a catering business then. I remember exactly where I was. I was driving to do a delivery for them. And just everyone was, after the doctors told us their various negative predictions, and everything just hit me. I was on the phone. I have a twin brother, Rabbi Shmuel Tzvi Adler, I'm very close with. And I was on the phone with him, and we were discussing what was going on. And I remember just everything hit me at once, the fact that the doctors, everything they're telling us, and that our son that we, were so excited about, finding out that my wife was pregnant with him, how the doctors are telling us that it's all over. And I was, just bawling tears, just crying to my brother, telling him how much, we really want the child, how much he means to us. And my brother told me something which really just changed my whole perception of what was going on. And it's something which is applicable to everybody. He said that all of us, go to yeshiva or to seminary, whatever, high school, whatever it is, we learn these concepts. And he's like, Shmuel Tzvi, you spend years in yeshiva talking about these concepts, learning about them. It's in your head already. Now you have to take it to the next level and just make it practical and actually, truly, really believe Hashem can do anything. And it was just my brother telling me just, lovingly, just as it is, straight as it is, that now I have to take everything I learned and just bring it to the next step. I had no choice. I felt like I was drowning by all the news the doctors were telling us. And I had to really just hone in on that belief that Hashem could do anything. And that really was like a light bulb moment where I realized I could do it. With my brother's encouragement, I could really believe that Hashem could do anything. So experiences like this, it just makes it real. All these concepts real.
Right. I think what you're referring to is that notion of the difference between medical school and residency. I read a few books about doctors and their journeys and how they learned. And it seems that generally they go to medical school for 8 years, right? They do pre-med and then medical school. And then they get out and it's literally like they knew nothing. They've been studying it for 8 years and they've never put their hands on a scalpel. They have to figure out everything. And it's like they're now they have to take everything that they learned and practically apply it to the human body with all the stressors that are around it. It's not It's, you're no longer in a classroom. Now you're in a chaotic environment. And it's completely different, when you are learning about Emunah and Bitachon and you live in a loving home and all your needs are met and you have friends and you generally have like the regular ups and downs. You're not necessarily challenged or questioned, and you don't have to push yourself and your Emunah and Bitachon and really say like, do I really believe? Like, am I a true believer? Or am I just like a convenient, like, okay, I believe in the concept, but do I really live it?
Exactly. Right.
So it sounds like you had that moment where you realized like, oh, this is my time to apply everything that how I was raised, what I grew up with, the values that I hold and agree with. And now I have to actually really sort of change my mindset to be one that is not just theoretical, but actually helpful to making me able to cope and continue to grow and to thrive in this situation.
100%. And not to say it was easy at all, but once I recognized that was my mission, it just gave me what to focus my strengths on. And I think it's important to anyone going through a challenge. Again, not that it's easy, but this is a way that we could really grow tremendously is by really making this real life Emunah. It's something that could benefit our whole life. Again, not that it's easy, but it could really have very far-reaching effects.
Yeah, let's make a disclaimer here. Anything we say that we make seem really easy, and we'll
Not at all.
We'll see. It's like when the contractor's like, all I have to do is build a foundation, make a house, put the plumbing in, turn on electricity, and you're good. And you're like, oh, is that all? So that it's $100, right? They're like, no, this is going to take months and months and thousands of dollars. So,
Absolutely.
You make it look easy because you've lived it and you had to go through the hard work, but it is a process.
Right. It's far from easy. Right. Yeah.
Right. Far from easy. So we want to acknowledge that and let people know that.
But it's attainable. It's far from easy, but with time and effort, it is attainable. And
it's worthwhile.
Not that I attained it. Right.
It's a worthwhile endeavor because I think that people who throw up their hands and they get, discouraged and they feel like there is no hope, then they really you can spiral into a depression. You could spiral into isolation and loneliness. If you don't do the work that it takes to actually stay connected to Hashem, stay connected with your community, work on your emunah, work on your bitachon, work on your tefillah. Like if you don't do the work, it's probably going to not work out very well. That has been my observation, but I'm not an expert, so so I think that so your son obviously is born, and you're given this dire prediction about what his life, that first of all incompatible with life, and then okay, he's living, but you're not going to necessarily have the same sort of childhood. He's not going to have the kind of childhood that you would expect, and to lower your expectations. But it sounds to me, based on the conversation that we initially had, that against all odds, he not only was born and he survived, that there is a component of thriving and joy and nachas that you get from him that people don't seem to realize exist. Can you talk a little bit more about these moments of these moments of happiness and joy that you have with your son, despite his continuing challenges?
Absolutely. So just to take a step back and to give a brief overview. And once our son was born, again, he did have numerous medical challenges, nowhere near as serious as all the doctors had made it sound before he was born. And they told us that he wouldn't survive for a day. And thank God he's turning 10. And actually, tomorrow is his English birthday, March 11th. So he's turning 10. That's 10 years that doctor told us he wouldn't have. But once he was born, the main issues that he struggled with as being an extremely premature baby was, of course, that his lungs were tiny. So he needed and still needs a ventilator support and he's also trached, so he trached in the ventilator. And another major issue that he struggled with, over the years was just his GI processing formula and different foods, because, again, it started off because he was small, so his whole digestive system was small. So he definitely had and still has his challenges that he's, thank God, making a lot of progress in. But one of the things that the doctors emphasized, besides for the idea that he would have survived, was that even if he did survive, he would never develop, and he would just remain a vegetable for his whole life. So as time passed, we slowly but surely saw that Baruch Hashem, with miracles, he really developed tremendously. One thing they told us straight out was that he'll never smile. And it's ironic, siyata d'shmaya, clear siyata d'shmaya. One of the things that nearly every single medical staff member that we meet, doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists, whoever it is, they always comment on how cute he is and how beautiful his smile is. So that one specific thing which doctor told us that he'll never do is probably the most talked about thing that all the medical staff, just see his joy. So really, the more we see that, the more that he's defying all the doctors' odds, not just by surviving, but being a smiley child. He can't verbalize, can't say words. He can vocalize. He could make sounds, which is another thing they told us he'll never do. But just to see his joy, my wife and I, my amazing wife, it's. I just want to point out, it's very much thanks to my wife Nechama, her incredible dedication, and just doing everything she can, everything we can together for our son to bring out whatever potential we possibly can bring out with siyata d'shmaya. But after a long day of work, I'm tired, and we go to our son, and he is, he just bursts into a smile, and you can see his eyes are lit up with joy. So not to say that there's no more challenges, dealing with his medical condition, but it's just a beautiful thing to see that he persevered and he proved all those doctors dead wrong.
That really makes me smile listening to you say that. Like the one thing that they say he couldn't do is the thing that he's known for, and which is such a I just feel like it's because they said that your son's neshama is like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
That's not. I'm going to, bring joy and happiness to the people in my life despite challenges. And
right. And just one specific example. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mrs. Rose. Go ahead.
No, that's it. That's all I have to say.
Good. Just to build on what you're saying, just one specific example. And this actually happened with a doctor that is very supportive of us, and he's been a very positive part of the team. But during COVID, it was just depressing for everybody. There's so many people dying and so many people sick. And we were, bathing our son right now is in a rehab, which there's a school attached where he goes to school, and he has all the therapies that he needs, which is clearly, without question, the most the best place for him to be. So we're visiting our son, and we're helping the staff, the nurses, and the CNAs bathe him. And the doctor walked in, and we always try to express our karsatov to the medical staff. And we thanked him. We said, "Doctor, you see, Yehoshua was smiling away." And we said, "Doc, you know why he's smiling so broadly? It's because of you and your amazing staff." And he looks at Yehoshua, and he looks at us, and he says, "I wish I could have that kid smile." So again, he was a doctor that was very positive with us, but it's just incredible to see that same medical world that was telling us all these dire predictions before his son was born and after, to have a doctor from that world telling us he wishes he had our son smile was just incredible. The clear siyata d'shmaya that Hashem, brought Yehoshua full circle.
Right. That's beautiful. So if were there times, with this joy and happiness that it gives you, were there some that were more surprising than others? Like, do you have a memory? I might be like pushing it here a little bit in the memory banks, but do you remember having something happen with him that was unexpected and that brought you like nachas or joy that was just not beside, obviously they said that he wasn't going to smile, but were there other milestones that he met that was not expected?
Sure. Yeah, I like that question. And I'll answer with first the more humorous one, and then the more of the serious milestones. But the humorous one was on the lines of what we were just discussing. Was my wife and I, you remember clearly, there was a doctor that was particularly negative with us. And just any ideas we had that we thought could benefit our son, he was basically fighting us in every step of the way. And it was a fairly difficult period. He was our son's primary doctor at that time. And there was whatever it was, our son wasn't feeling well, and the doctor came to check him up. So he leaned over with the stethoscope to listen to our son. And, when our son, even if sometimes it's amazing, but even if he has fever, he could still be, in a good mood and smiley, which is incredible. So our son was smiling and waving his arms back and forth, like, playing with his arms. And the doctor leaned over to listen to our son's breathing or something. And our son just stopped him in the face by accident.
Right.
By accident. But I have to hold myself back from laughing because admittedly, this was a doctor that made, life really miserable for us. And I guess Hashem has his ways, but it was just funny that our son, helped, give us a little therapy with that.
It's like the opposite of like passive aggressive, like using your child as a way to like get back. I don't know what you could call that.
We did not tell our son to do it at all, but we weren't disappointed when he did. And then I had to, without laughing, I had to, very sincerely apologize to the doctor and say he didn't do it on purpose, and he smacks me in the face too sometimes. Like I had to try to really stay serious about it. That's a humorous incident, but just two real specific examples that come straight to mind. Is that along with our son's issues with breathing and his GI, is that our son, Baruch Hashem, it's improved tremendously, but he has severe scoliosis, which for those that don't know means that his spine and his whole posture is bent. So our son, his body was seriously bent, and when he was about, I forget exactly, I wrote a whole extensive chapter on this in my book, but when he was about, I would say 2 or 3 years old, we, booked an appointment. There's an organization called High Medical Research, just to throw it out there, who have been advising us, on which doctors to go to from day one. And they're an amazing organization in case anybody finds themselves in a situation where you need help. You can look them up online, or there's a phone number to call. They've been huge help. So they found us orthopedic office to go to just to see what could be done with regards to surgery. Our son's spine was bent, and his knees were also bent. And basically, there's 2 doctors that we went to, 2 surgeons, and one of them said that he would never do surgery on our son, period. He just wouldn't do it. And then another doctor was a little nicer and a little more encouraging. He said that he may consider doing it, but not for another 5 to 10 years, which that was devastating for us because, if a person's spine is bent, that could, impact their breathing, impact their digestion, and it can make them very uncomfortable. So having these surgeries to straighten the spine and the knees would have went very far in increasing our son's quality of life. So like we did with every other negative experience we had with our son, we made a decision that we're not going to give up. We're going to have be talking to Hashem to do anything. And we kept on going. They kept on telling us to come back, 6 months later to see this doctor just for a checkup. And to make a long story short, it took a while with the high medical resources help and a clear siyata d'shmaya, but eventually it reached a point where the doctors agreed to do the surgery. And honestly, they really didn't have any valid explanation why, several years before they refused to do it, and now they were agreed to do it. It was clear siyata d'shmaya. But we came to realize through different tidbits that they told us that really they didn't believe that our son, it sounds a little scary to say, they didn't believe that our son would survive life. So it wasn't worth their while to operate on him. That's what we found out through various bits and pieces of what that they said. After several years, when they saw, hey, this kid is still here, Baruch Hashem, he's going strong, then they agreed to do surgery. And just like our greatest hopes were that these surgeries would help him breathe and help him, with his digestion, with his GI, and just increase, his happiness and his comfort. And there were 2 separate surgeries. One was for his straightening his knees. The other one was straightening his spine. They were a few years apart. So there's 2 totally different journeys. But we really saw incredible impact for our son. To see that they're able to wean the settings on the ventilator, which means, just to clarify, for those that don't understand, a ventilator has a number of different amounts of oxygen that they could give, and the pressure of how strong it inputs the oxygen. So they're able to lower the pressure of how strong the input of oxygen, lower the amount of oxygen that he needs. And just all in all, his heart rate went down because he was more comfortable. And just every day that we see him, he's just so much more relaxed and happy and comfortable, even more than he was before, as a direct result of these surgeries. And it's just amazing that we had to fight so hard for it, again, with siyata d'shmaya and with the help of Astanim. but it really, really, once they did it, made a big, big difference for our son. And just beautiful to see the result.
Right. And it sounds like you guys are amazing advocates. And again, with Siyata Dishmaya and with Hadracha from Rebbeim and organizations, and there's really like a lot of community. It sounds like as part of your journey, you said, welcome to the team. It sounds like you guys are used to collecting team members, the Shmuel Adler team, and so to help as coping mechanisms. But what would you say are some of your biggest challenges in supporting a child with such a complex medical condition, like in the daily life, in your, in every day, to today?
Yeah. So, just to start off on a positive note, again, like you said, Team Yehoshua, I like the way you put that. Like you said, my wife and I are very involved in advocating for him. And I must be totally honest. I just reached my wife's footsteps. My wife is incredible with she literally throws her heart and soul in taking care of our son and making sure that the doctors and nurses do the best they can. And I'm scared to think where our son would be without my wife, fighting for him like a lioness. And I just try to follow in her footsteps. But and just the positive note is that we really have a tremendous support group. Like I said, family and friends and neighbors. That being said, I would say one of the hardest challenges is just the roller coaster of, there's surgeries that we are expecting to happen. And then there's, unfortunately, the ICU visits where, our son gets sick, he gets an infection or something, little later, God forbid. And each experience by itself may be more bearable, but they just, all the experiences together just become one big roller coaster where you find, like, over the past 10 years, Baruch Hashem, I'm not complaining, but we really had very little time to just settle down and relax. So just as in the overall picture, it just gets very, very draining. That being said, if you focus on the positives and try to really just make that the priority, then it could become, with God's help, bearable, and friends and family really make a big difference with that.
Right. I think you and I discussed this, that there's almost, on one hand, it's very difficult and draining, and the cycle of in and out of the hospital it can really be a challenge. And then the other hand is, like, man has the capacity to, like, adapt to any circumstances. And it almost, I don't know about you, and you could tell me if you've experienced this, but it almost became like routine to just be in and out of the hospital and be like, oh, we have an infection. Let me run to the market and give the kids some pasta before, like, I call 911. Like, just sort of, like, you get so used to, like, running around that you fit your life within the confines of this medical crisis. Did you find that it's sort of normal? It's almost like normalized this pace.
Right. Well, I appreciate the fact, if you don't mind me saying, that you had your own journey, and you could say whatever details you want. That's not what we're talking about now. But the fact that you have your own journey makes you're able to ask the right questions and relate to what we're going through. Honestly, I would say it does get easier. Normalize is a very strong word. I don't feel it never became normal for us, honestly. Okay. It's still nearly impossible to sleep in the ICU. It's very difficult, especially at the last minute, to try to throw together whatever stuff we need, knowing that we're going to the hospital. So I do agree it gets easier, but it's not normal. I wouldn't use that word.
Okay. Fair enough. Everyone is entitled to their experience. And I think it's also different, a child versus, an adult.
Right.
And
right.
Also the degree, the severity and the ability of the child or the person to advocate for themselves. So it's not obviously the same situation. But that's why I asked the question, did it become routine? It sounds like it didn't, that this is still something that is, and it always happens on, like, Shabbos and Yontif.
Exactly. Or Yontif, the work time. Yeah.
It's
exactly.
Always. My mother used to be like, my mother used to love it because I would always be like, of course it's during Shabbos and Yontif. Of course I might as well go over there and call Hatzalah on the way just for fun. And then the Hatzalah members would show up and they're wearing their suits and their jackets and she'd be like, oh, you dressed up for me? And first they would say yes, because they're wonderful. Hatzalah is wonderful.
I was going to say Hatzalah is amazing. But also, you're saying that touches on something, another idea I just wanted to address quickly, it's just that the humor. I think that's beautiful. It's yeah, you dressed up for me. It's just, and like I said, I don't think, at least for my wife and I, it never became normal. But there are things to do to try to make things easier and more positive. And like my wife and I, if we're with our son, there's always that underlying stress, but we do our best to try to make it a positive experience. So my wife's incredible. Again, things, sticker books to do with our son, to put stickers on the different pictures I have in the book, or she reads him, stories that are humorous, or we sing together to him, or just last week we made a whole concert. I mean, I make it sound like a whole concert, but it was me banging on a chair, singing away. But he was laughing, and it was a very upbeat. I feel like the joy we had in that room with our son, could be comparable to the joy you have in massive concerts with famous singers. So it's just the idea, just to try as much as you can to put that positivity in and to focus on it. That could really make a huge difference to the whole experience.
Right. And again, this is my experience, but I'm curious if you had a similar experience. Sounds like you did, but I found that while it's extremely challenging and it's draining, there's a duality that exists because we're spending more time with the individual. We're getting quality time. We're making sure that every moment counts, and that we squeeze every drop of laughter and connection from the interactions, even if it's in the hospital, in the ICU. And so even though it's in a way it's tremendously difficult, there's also like this silver lining of a gift that I got to spend all that time that I probably wouldn't have, because I'm a grown woman with a family, and probably wouldn't have spent as much quality time taking care of my mother, connecting with her, trying to make her feel better, trying to do Ikur Cholim with her, and to try to enliven her situation. We got much closer because of it. So it sounds like you also have that experience to a degree where it's, you're trying to find simcha and joy in all the places, not just when, you're supposed to, on Purim and birthday parties, but that every moment that's an opportunity to experience joy with your child, you're going to take it.
Exactly. And I feel like it pours over to other relationships as well, in a person's life, not just with the child or parents or sibling that's sick, but it could really it just puts a different perspective on life and a deeper appreciation for relationships with family. And that could really be very beneficial. It could really make an impact on a person's whole life.
Right. I think that this is like a deeply personal story, and it sounds like you have, with this book, on one hand, you opened your story to, the public, to say, like, this is what we went through, this is how we dealt with it, and this is how we keep going. And then also having to maintain privacy and boundaries since you released the book. Has that been a challenge for you?
So I'll say like this: a person always, especially when there's other family members involved, the person always has to have sensitivity to, their spouse or the children, whoever else is involved. At the same time, I feel that it's imperative just for a person's emotional health to share some of their struggles with somebody. It could be a close friend, it could be a family member, but it's very, very beneficial. I'm talking just from my own personal experience. I think it's this way for everybody, even someone who's not necessarily outgoing. It doesn't have to be a speech for an entire audience, but just to find like 2 or 3 close friends. It doesn't have to be family members, but sometimes a person could get lucky to have close family members too. Like I am, my wife and I are very lucky to have that. But I think it's imperative just for a person's emotional health when they're going through a challenge to be able to talk it through with somebody. Again, a person has to decide what they're comfortable sharing, what they're not. But I think the starting point is to share what you can, because it's going to help you, and it's emotionally healthy to do that.
Yeah. So what do you do if someone asks you something that you feel is inappropriate or crosses the line? Do you have a line that you say, or something that you say that sort of lets people know that you're not comfortable answering the question? Do you have advice in how you say that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that the answer is that a person has to realize they have the right, they have their own self-respect, and that belongs to them. They have the right, their own privacy as well. They have the right to quote unquote say no. And if someone's asking a question that's uncomfortable over the phone, if that's the example, if it's over the phone, then you could just say, you have the right not to share it. So make up whatever excuse you have to end the phone call. You can tell them you have to go to the bathroom, tell them that you're getting an important phone call. I think you could ask your local Orthodox rabbi, but I think a person could even make up a story if they have to, if someone's really making them uncomfortable. If it's in person, the same thing. Just it's not on the phone, but a person, you have the right to end the conversation and just say you got to go and walk away. Tell them you have something you need to take care of. Whatever it is you tell them, you have that right for privacy.
Right. I think there is sort of this obligation people feel in a world that is so transparent about every part of our lives, either through social media or their text messaging or, WhatsApp groups, that everyone is so transparent about what's going on in their lives. They almost feel like an achrayus, and the person who wants the information feels like a sense of entitlement, like, well, I'm davening for you, so you have to give me an update. And it has to be an update that gives me as many details as I want and I'm comfortable with, so that my tefillos will count or something. Like, I have heard that, like, well, it helps with my tefillah. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm still not going to share that with you.
Right.
So I think we need to let the audience, I like what you're saying about, like, feel empowered and secure in your boundaries and yourself, know them in advance, and prepare, like, predispose yourself that people will ask you uncomfortable questions, and know what you will and won't say.
Right.
So, actually, this is just a funny story, but somebody asked me, oh, are you related to so-and-so? And I said, yes. And they said, weren't they sick? How are they doing? And I laughed and I said, it was 20 years ago. Like,
oh, wow.
This family member was sick 20 years ago. And I didn't answer. I didn't answer the question. I was just like, yeah, that was 20 years ago. The person is fine, and Baruch Hashem, the family member is fine, and there's no side effects, and everything is great. And Baruch Hashem, it turned out to be, that they were able to obviously survive, and it was not a problem. But it was just funny to me how, like, people will like, if they know a little bit of information about you, they'll want all the information about you.
Right. Right. I think it's fair what you're saying also, that there is a benefit. I'm just saying a benefit of sharing some information from people that are davening, because it's true, they can daven better, but that no way means that you have to. If you're not comfortable, if a person's not comfortable sharing it, then you have that right not to share it.
Right. I like that. Okay. I want to let you go because it's dinner time, and we started late because of my poor time management skills. And
that's okay.
So, I guess, is there anything else you'd like to leave the audience with, in terms of, like, giving them chizuk, or something that maybe we didn't mention or talk about that you feel is noteworthy to mention?
Yeah. So there's really 2 points that I want to just embellish on. One is regarding what we were discussing earlier about the Jewish ideas which could help a person, and that firstly, tefillah. Like I was saying the story with my brother, that a lot of these concepts of mudu, b'tachon, and davening, they really, and like you yourself said, Mrs. Rose, that they really become so much more real when a person goes through experiences like this. And just feel like I learned that a person could daven in any language. It doesn't have to be Hebrew. It doesn't have to be Yiddish. It could be English. It could be Spanish. It could be Chinese. It could be just in your mind. A person doesn't even have to verbalize it. So there was times that I really felt like I was stuck in the corner. Doctors told us, even after our son was born, that there was one period of time where there was a surgery he had to have, which they're telling us that there was no choice but to have the surgery, and there was only a 50% chance of him surviving. And I remember just crying. I went to daven, and I was just crying my head out. I said, at the time I was actually in shul, and I said, I'm just blocking everybody out. I don't care what people think about me. I'm just terrified for my son. And I just spoke to God in English, Hashem, please, I can't take this pressure anymore. Just the decision of whether they should do the surgery was too much for me. Just the thought of the 50% chance of him not surviving. And I just spoke heart to heart to God. And that's one of the main things that I learned from this whole journey was it's life-changing to realize that we have a direct connection to Hashem. And it's so easy to reach out to him. It's not just 3 times a day. Any second of the day, a person can just reach out to Hashem about any problem. And it could be in English. We could just talk our own language. And it's so many times where I really felt overwhelmed, and I just let a load off my shoulders to Hashem. And it was so rejuvenating. And the same goes with Amunah. Amunah could really be a real life concept. And just to show how I was able to, how that became clear to me with our experiences. In the beginning, when doctors said that, that whatever predictions they made, that he's having real trouble breathing, and we're not sure whether we'll be able to improve. So the first few times, I'm a human being, of course, just like anybody else, and I panicked. I just said, oh my gosh, that's it. All is lost, but he's not going to survive. And then after a few days, I saw, hey, he's breathing better than the doctor said. And I davened, and I tried to tell myself that Hashem could do anything. And then I saw in reality that Hashem was taking care of our son, that the doctors were wrong, that he was breathing better than they said. And then every time that happened, I feel like the best way a person could grow in their Amunah is less from reading a sefer, less from reading a book, less from hearing a talk or a shmooze, more from real life seeing, hey, I felt like I was stuck in the corner, whatever scenario it is. I thought there's no way out, and I turned to Hashem, and he got me out. The next time we're in a scenario like that, we just have to go back to the first time and say, hey, Hashem got me out once. He could do it again. And throughout the past many years with our son, I'm grateful that I had those opportunities to flex that muscle and to exercise it and go to the Amunah exercise gym. And the more we see Hashem saving us, the more we're able to latch into that. And the easier, not that it's easy, but it gets easier as we face challenges to realize and believe that Hashem could actually help us because he's done it so many times in the past. So that's just in the real world. Yeah.
Which is basically, you have to have gratitude. You have to have an attitude of gratitude, as my brother would say, where it's noticing. I think a lot of times people don't notice because they're so caught up in their sense of grief and loss and trauma that they might not have that attitude of gratitude of what is going right? When did Hashem save me? When was there a miracle? And if you focus on the gratitude, then you're more likely to be able to use it as a coping mechanism and as proof and data that Hashem continues to come through for you. Sometimes he will, sometimes he won't. We don't always know right, wrong, good, bad. That's not really in our, sometimes I know a lot of times people daven and things don't work out, and people do ask the question, well, where were my tefillos and what happened to them and why didn't they work? And that's something that's very normal for children to ask. I did a podcast on tefillah, and that was a question that we talked about. But I think to your point, though, is that it sounds like you were actively looking for that, Hashem's, the Yad Hashem in your life. And so you were able to identify it and then see it and then use it to be machazik the next time. Hashem has led me through this terrible situation before. He could do it again. Nothing is out of his ability and capacity. And I just have to rely on that.
Right. And not that it came easy and not that it came automatically, but like I said, the more I look for it, we have to search. That doesn't make it easy for us, but the more we look for it and the more we'll find it, and then it will become easier to look for. And what's incredible is that this really, going through challenges and having that opportunity to try to see God's hand, really, a person really grows and it impacts their happiness and joy in life, being able to connect to God in that way. I just want to mention, I have a brother-in-law, my wife's brother. His name is JJ Eizik, who is now married with 3 healthy children, thank God, and a healthy wife. But he had cancer 5 times. Came back and left, and he's been clean for several years. But my brother-in-law says straight out, this is a 5-time cancer survivor, that cancer was one of the best things that ever happened to him. And I think it's because of this reason, which it's incredible for someone to say something like that. And Mrs. Rose, you mentioned that, regarding your journey also, how much you benefited. But it just gives us a fresh perspective on our relationship with God. It helps us connect with him. And it just brings, again, it's along with the challenge. It doesn't mean that it's easy to get to this. But after we struggle, it can bring such joy with the connection to God and an appreciation for relationships and just the simple things of life, which really, really, at the end of the day, bring tremendous benefit and joy to a person's life. So it's not easy, but there's definitely growth and what to gain.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
One last point, if I may, and that we alluded to this, but just with regards to how you were talking about sharing things with other people, what to share, what not to share. But I just want to just emphasize that friends and family of someone that's going through a struggle, whether it is with a child that's sick or with the fertility problems or with financial problems, if someone's going through a divorce, whatever it is, someone's going through a challenge, it could really be the simple things that could go the furthest in helping them. Some of the best things that people have done for us, honestly, like my warmest memories of the things that people gave us, is just going to my in-laws for a Shabbos meal, or going to them for Shabbos, going to my sister-in-law, or to my sister, to my brother, to my parents, to friends and neighbors. Just going to them for a Shabbos or for a meal it's more. It's not such a dramatic thing. You don't have to give them $10,000. They don't have to do anything major, but just having them for Shabbos or a Suda, or even you don't have to have them for a whole meal, making them a potato kugel. Honestly, from our experience, those have been probably the most encouraging. That gave us the most chizuk. And just an example comes to mind. Just recently, in the past year, our son had to be in the ICU because he was sick, and we just didn't have time to bring breakfast with us. And one morning we came home, we slept over at night, and the next morning there was breakfast delivered to our door. So we wouldn't have had time to get breakfast, but we just grabbed it and ran, and it was just a small act that really just I still haven't forgotten. It's been a while. Or someone else made us a supper. We just didn't have time to eat, and just the delicious food was really rejuvenating. So again, these aren't really major. They're not so difficult to do, but those small acts, I'm telling you from our experience, it goes the furthest to help somebody. And if you have a neighbor or a friend or family member that's struggling, then I beg you on their behalf, do something. Don't push yourself more than you can, but try to think of just a simple text. I have a neighbor just recently. My son actually had a surgery a few weeks ago, and the neighbor, he texted me before the surgery. I'm thinking of you. I hope it goes well. The day of the surgery, he texted me, I'm dominating. 2 days after the surgery, he texted again, I'm thinking of you. So they weren't invasive questions, but they just gave me the feeling that my friend really cared. And all it was a simple text, but it went so far. So I want to just make it clear that friends and family and neighbors, you don't really have to do anything major. I'm making a pun on words. You don't have to do anything major in order to do something major. It doesn't have to take a great amount of effort, but just these small things. I'm telling you from the past 10 years plus of our experience with our son, these small things go so far. So if you're able to do it, just please do, because they really, really give encouragement to a friend and neighbor in need.
Right. And I actually...
Mrs. Rose, this is what you did. You're taking the time to interview me. Really, it made me feel valued. The fact that I may perhaps, hopefully, as it's supposed for our son, be able to help somebody else. It was a big encouragement, getting to talk to you. So thank you very much for that.
No problem. Do you mind if I ask you one more question?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. That was one question, but that's not the question. The question is, I think that there might be a hesitancy from people in approaching your situation from the outside, who know of your story or hear of your story. I guess, what would be an appropriate response when they hear that you have a son who is on a ventilator, who's nonverbal, who, has these medical challenges? What is an appropriate response from somebody who hears that? Because I just imagine, like, if someone came up to me and told me, like, it like somehow came out, like, I might be a little bit uncomfortable because I don't know what to say or how to react or what's appropriate. What would you recommend to people who are, come across somebody who is describing a difficult situation?
So I would say the natural reaction would be either to, which is clearly not helpful, but just to continue with the conversation and ignore. If someone just told you, let's say in conversation, by the way, I have a child that has these medical issues, to just ignore it, it isn't really going to help that person. So it may be an easy way out of an uncomfortable situation. But I think the natural reaction would just be, to ask how the child is doing, which is fine, but just at least acknowledge, and just saying it must be difficult for you.
Yeah.
And that's all. Instead of asking questions, well, what is his exact medical issue? What hospital did he go to? Who's his doctors? Those are actually generally not helpful. Just acknowledging and saying, I'm thinking of you. I tell everybody that you can't lose by saying I'm davening for you, or even better, I'm thinking of you.
Mm.
So just saying I'm thinking of you, honestly, if it's someone that you don't know that well, or you just found out about something, so you're not going to ask any, get into a real detailed conversation. For me, the most meaningful thing was either a quick tap on the shoulder, if that's appropriate, or just saying I'm thinking of you. Honestly, I think means the world.
Wonderful. This has been so interesting. Not the direction I thought it was going to go in, but that's kind of the joy of podcasting, is meaning I knew that we were going to talk about your son. I didn't know where the emphasis would land or what it went, but what I really got from this conversation is that we know, based on the life we've chosen to live and the things that we've learned about Hashem and our relationship with him and others, what the right thing is. And we have to tap into that and really utilize all the resources that Hashem gives us with him, through tefillah, through emunah, bitachon. And again, we make it sound easy. We know it's not easy.
Right.
But this was a really inspirational. And I did, when I said I was smiling, when you were telling me about your son smiling, I really had a very wide smile on my face.
You're making me smile. You're making me smile. We appreciate that.
It's a genuine response, that I, obviously, I mean, I knew it was going to be an interesting story, but, I appreciate the ups and downs and the emotional parts of it. So thank you so much for your time. Please send regards to your wife. Sounds like she's a true Ishmael and that you guys are an amazing couple. Can you tell us the name of your book and where we could purchase it?
Sure. And before that, I'm going to give a shout out to my brother Naftali, because I think he helped later shoot us a little bit, introducing you to me. So thank you.
Well, actually, I would say your brother, who's a teacher at Torres Chaim, was more impactful.
Oh,
because
my twin brother. I'm very close with him.
Yes, because I went to PTA and I saw your sign hanging up for your book, and it said, please contact whatever. And I put two and two together, and I was like, that's Tully. Why didn't you get your brother to be on my podcast? I have this podcast. Why are you not connecting me? And he's like, oh, I don't know. I didn't think about it. So right. I don't know how much credit we could give Naftali, but we could definitely give your twin brother.
We'll give both of them credit.
Okay.
Naftali's older than me, so I have to.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, he did, reach out to you and get your contact information for me and talk to you. So, all right, we will give him some credit. But
Okay.
but it did start with your twin brother. So
okay, everyone, you're the best.
Great.
And you asked about the book. So the name of the book is Wings of Hope. It was published by Adir Press and it is available in almost all bookstores, and you can also get it on Amazon. You can search Wings of Hope, and it's also available on Feldheim.com. They're the ones that distributed it.
Wonderful. I hope that people will get it and read it, and be inspired.
Okay, and thank you once again, Mrs. Rose. Thank you very much for this. It's been this has been inspirational for me. So thank you.
No problem. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay. Views expressed by me, your host, and my delightful guest are not necessarily reflective of each other's views, ideas, or life choices. Sometimes we're on the same page, and other times we're not.